Okay, let's go into it. Judges 8:1. So he went and did the attack, and it was very successful. And so they're still kind of on the run. And in Judges 8:1, now the men of Ephraim said to him, "Why have you done this to us by not calling us when you went to fight with the Gideonites?" And they reprimanded him sharply. So he said to them, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian," or Ben-Zeeb. "And what was I able to do in comparison with you?" Then their anger toward him subsided when he said that. So if you remember, the Ephraimites, they went and they captured these two princes, and they took care of them. They got royalty. They got the Midianite royalty. So the Ephraimites, they're upset with Gideon that he didn't invite them to participate in this first battle. But actually in chapter 7, verse 24, it says that Gideon sent messengers throughout Ephraim asking them to come down against the Midianites. He actually sent messengers out there. So that they wouldn't have even known to get involved if Gideon hadn't made that effort. But even still, they snapped at him. They reprimanded him sharply. Have you ever been reprimanded sharply? And it doesn't just get your blood boiling. Well, how dare you talk to me like that? And that's kind of what happens to me. I got a quick temper, but I also have grace that teaches me to have a little self-control in there too. And I feel my blood boiling. I go, wait a minute, Ray, don't pop. You represent Christ. Chill out a minute. And give a gentle answer. Is there maybe a way to give a gentle answer to things like this? You know, if you're not going to pay attention to grace and just blow out, you're going to cause trouble. Now, Gideon could have done this, but he didn't. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." You know, even if you're the one that's right, and somebody pops off at you, "Well, listen here, buddy," and you ball up your fists, now you're wrong. Well, wait a minute, I'm the one doing right. No, by the way, you turned and unleashed. You're now wrong too. And so Gideon's response that he did here demonstrated self-control because he did not want to start up an intertribal war. That's the last thing Israel needs right now when they're trying to get delivered of oppression, is to now change it for a war with each other. They didn't need that. But Gideon said here, he said, "What have I done in comparison with you?" is what he said. What he meant by this is that he and the 300, remember God trimmed his forces down and down and down until he only had 300. God goes, "You got too many people, here's less. You got too many people, here's less," because he didn't want Israel to brag, "Oh, look what we did." Gideon and the 300, they only began this battle. They launched the attack. They only began it. But the Ephraimites, they came in and they killed off the Midianite princes, Oreb and Zeeb. They got the Midianite royalty. Ooh, we got something here. So you can hear what Gideon meant when he said, "What have I done in comparison with you?" You hear that? He was saying, hey, in comparison to what I did, y'all actually did better than what me and my 300 did. He was saying, in comparison, you did better. So it's like Gideon is saying, what are y'all complaining about? What are you mad about? What are you upset? Why are you reprimanding me? You actually came out pretty good. Gideon also said, "Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer?" Now, Gideon's tribe was the tribe of Abiezer. He's talking about his own guys. It's like, didn't y'all glean better than what we got? Y'all did better than we did. And so Gideon said that the Ephraimites' gleanings in this battle were better than what his own tribe did. Back in that time, some of you are thinking of Ruth right now. Every time I hear the word glean, I think of Ruth. Back in that time, gleaning was a practice of leaving some of your harvest in the field for others to come and get it behind you. In Deuteronomy 24:21, it says, "When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow." You're not supposed to glean after the main harvest. The main pickers go through. You're not supposed to go back and pick up the little pieces that everybody missed. You're supposed to leave that. And You're supposed to leave the pieces that were missed. In fact, you're supposed to purposely leave some. You don't pick it all. You purposely leave gleanings for people to get some produce behind as a gesture of generosity to other people. You're supposed to leave it. Leviticus 19:9. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. Okay, so send all the pickers through. Don't touch the corners. Don't even touch it. That makes it easier for people that are poor, and the foreigners can say, man, look what they left us. How nice. See the generosity in that. And so typically the main harvest, though, is always bigger than the gleanings would be. The main harvest is supposed to be much more is picked than the gleanings. But Gideonite told the Ephraimites, he said, is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? What he said is, your gleanings were more than what we got. It's like, what are you mad at me for? You actually did really, really good in this battle. What Gideon meant is, y'all's gleaning produced more than what my tribe did of Abiezer, even though we started the attack in the first place. So Ephraim's gleaning was better than the initial attack of Abiezer. And so that's why Gideon then said to them in verse 3, he said, God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeeb. They got the princes, they got the royalty. That's what made the Ephraimites' side of it better. That's what made their gleanings greater. And so they got the Midianite royalty. And so now you can understand now what Gideon said in verse 3 when he said, what was I able to do in comparison with you? Now I get what he's saying. And so the Ephraimites, they realized they came out of this pretty good. So it says their anger subsided. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, we get it. Sorry, and yeah, we did come out pretty good. And okay, let's not be mad anymore, guys. Let's go home peacefully. You know what I think we just saw happen here? When you really look at what went down, is that God resolved a major conflict that could have kicked off. A major conflict through Gideon's self-control. Again, you feel yourself getting ready to just blow. Somebody talked at you in a way that was condescending. You didn't like it. They insulted you a little bit. And your first reaction in that sin nature is to fire back. Well, they started it. But a soft answer turns away wrath. And actually, look, now they're better. Now the Ephraimites realize, hey, we actually did pretty good. Now they're realizing blessing. And you're going to be confronted with situations like this in your life all the time. And it's always better to find a way to let God speak through the grace that He has put into you to resolve conflict like this. And another matter that I don't want us to miss here is how Gideon took no credit at all in this battle. He didn't even name himself as a victor. He didn't say, well, me and my guys, us, I did this. He didn't even say his own name. He didn't try to take and steal any credit. He mentioned his entire clan. That's why he said Abiezer. He didn't say me. He said Abiezer. He's not counting himself above everyone else. He never set himself up above others. Had Gideon told the Ephraimites to pipe down, dude, chill out, because I'm the one that God called, not you. You hear that pride in there? Okay, God called you. Yeah, I guess so. I've seen people called of God. Well, God called me, not you. I'm right. Listen to what I say. And that doesn't go good. It gets people mad. It gets people upset. So Gideon didn't even say me. He said Abiezer, my tribe. He's trying to lower himself. It's called humble. It's called humility. And Gideon had to work all these elements together in the face of friction, in the face of hostility, to keep an inter-tribal war from kicking off. And it worked. I mean, did you not see the Ephraimites went home? They're like, okay, we have nothing to be mad about. We did pretty good. Philippians 2:3, let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind. Let each esteem others better than himself. I've seen people, they get it in their mind they're better than others. Well, they've climbed the mountain of success and they're way up there and they're just so, I'm just so awesome, I'm so great and wonderful. When I step in the room, everybody part and let me walk through, and they get this conceited attitude. And it's so ungodly, and it destroys, and it divides, and it hurts. Consider everybody better than you. And that's a tough one because we got this natural tendency to think we're all that in the bag of chips, as Dove says. But you got to consider everybody's better than you. Everybody else is better than you. That will keep you humble. And that's what Gideon did. Gideon esteemed the Ephraimites as better than himself. He did say that they did better, didn't they? He goes, you did better than Abiezer. Y'all did better than we did. He didn't go, gosh, they got the Midianite princes. I wish we had done that. And go back to his own tribe. Why didn't you get the Midianite princes? We should have done that. The Ephraimites got them. Now, he didn't do that. He commended the Ephraimites. He goes, look what y'all did. Y'all did better than we did. And you know, I will say too, I get up here and preach and you think, wow, he's the pastor and he must be so awesome. Okay, y'all go out there in the world to your coworkers and people in the workplace where you could get written up for talking about Jesus and you get the opportunity to share the gospel with people. Guys, that's harder to do than what I'm doing. You are doing better than what I'm doing when you go out there and share the gospel in your workplace. I commend you for it. So good. So, he honored the Ephraimites in this way, and that's part of what calmed their anger. You know, friends, self-control and esteeming others better than yourself will go a long, long way. It goes a long way with people, even with unbelievers, especially unbelievers. And I have to consider the fact that Jesus, even Jesus Christ himself, he lowered himself even below us. Jesus is the top, and he didn't have to do that. He lowered himself below me to go all the way to the cross, to die on the cross for my salvation. If Jesus can do that for me, I can do that for everybody who walks this planet. I guarantee you. Jesus humbled himself. And in the face of the Ephraimites, Gideon could have blown his top, but for the sake of peace among the tribes, he humbled himself and he maintained his composure and he used a soft answer to turn away their wrath. Let's be like Gideon in this story, okay? And in the face of hostility, let's be like Jesus Christ. Judges 8 and 4. Wow, there's a lot in those first few verses, wasn't there? Let's milk it, man. Judges 8 and 4. I almost said Jesus 8 and 4. Might as well. Judges 8 and 4. When Gideon came to the Jordan, he and the 300 men who were with him crossed over, exhausted but still in pursuit. Then he said to the men of Succoth, please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the leaders of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand that we should give bread to your army? Well, I didn't like the sound of that. Are they already in your hands? It's like you already got them? Okay. Most of the sizable Midianite groups have been beaten. The Ephraimites killed off 2 of their princes, but there's still some Midianites on the run, and 2 kings that Gideon wants to get them to because they commanded and they profited Israel's oppression. They commanded Israel's oppression and they profited from Israel's oppression because they stole their food, destroyed their crops. These kings made all this happen. They were pushing this. So Gideon really wants them. And remember, this happened for the last 7 years now. So these men from Succoth here, Gideon asked them for bread for his army to help them capture these enemy kings. Now, some of you might notice that the name Succoth looks a lot like the word Sukkot, if you're familiar with Israeli holidays, biblical holidays. Sukkot, which is another name for the Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of Booths. Succoth means a booth, and Sukkot is the holiday, Feast of Tabernacles. And so because this place is named Succoth because the booths that had been set up by Jacob back in Genesis 33. I want to just give you a little background. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house. I'm lisping now. I'm glad I'm not in the book of Thessalonians. I'd really be in trouble. Get it out. Succoth. Okay. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth. There, I made it. Almost messed up again, too. So Gideon says, if you give bread to my army behind me, then you'd be helping us capture these two kings. Help us capture these two kings, give bread to my army. But the answer the men of Succoth gave was, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand that we should give bread to your army? They are asking, do you already have them? Do you have them yet? If you have them in your hands already, then we'll give bread to your army, which indicates if you don't have them in your hands already, then we won't help you. It's like, could you give bread to my army? Well, that depends. That's not what you want to hear when you're trying to march forward in faith from other people. Come with me and help me. Well, that depends. I don't know. I don't like the sound of that. I don't like it at all. Why would the men of Succoth be like this? What's their problem? Let's look at the map here. We got a map coming up here. As you can see, the Midianites were fleeing from Israel to the east. They can't flee west because they'd run into the Mediterranean Sea that way, so they have to go east. Now, if you notice, Succoth is outside of Israel, just east of the Jordan, and so the reason the men of Succoth denied bread to Gideon's army is because they believe that Gideon is going to fail. They think he's not going to get these kings, that he will not capture them. And when the Midianites get away and regroup, then these kings will order them to go back west to Israel, and when they do, the men of Succoth will be the first ones on their way back to catch their revenge. So they're asking, do you already have them? Do you already have these guys so that we give bread to your army? They're thinking for themselves. They're not even in the fight, guys, and they're concerned about their own tail. And this is why the men of Succoth would not help Gideon's army, because they doubted the power of God, first of all, and they feared the Midianite kings more than they feared the God of Israel. They didn't have enough faith in the God of Israel that He would take care of the things He said He would take care of. And they were afraid the Midianites would come back and get them. So look again at verse 6. The leaders of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand? In other words, have you arrested or killed them yet that we should give bread to your army? Friends, we have to understand that the men of Succoth were under the Midianite oppression too. They suffered under this as well. They should have been on board with Gideon. You would think they'd have been like, you're going after the kings? Man, we'll give all the bread we got. But they were more scared of the kings. They were more scared of the world than they were of God. That is a major problem that we have in supposed Christian circles right now today. People are more scared of what the world will do to them if they follow God than what they're scared of God will do to them if they don't follow Him. Big, big problem. You think I feel 100% comfortable going to Planned Parenthood on the first Saturday of the month to pray against abortion, standing right outside that facility? Sometimes it's not very easy, but I'm not so scared of it that I'm going to tell God, no, I won't do it. God, has that place come down already? Have you already taken it down? Well, then I'm not going. You know, that's kind of the attitude. Friends, I go there and I pray and people come with me. We go there and people hate me for it. And people write emails and they say nasty, threatening things, but I still go there because God told me to do it. I don't let the world dictate to me what I am and what I will and will not do because of my being scared of the world. I fear the Lord God more. And we got to get on board with those who are doing the work. But these men of Succoth were more afraid of the enemy than they were of God. And their response was, if you don't already have these two kings in your hands, then we're not helping. That makes me sad. It makes me sad because there's a lot of people like this. There's a lot more people that need to realize, hey, look at those guys working. We need to get behind them. We need to support them. That's one of the reasons why we support Dove Schwartz when he goes to Africa. He's going soon. We help him go. I've been with him before to Africa. I've been to Nigeria and we go preach the gospel. We need to get behind that and help. Judges 8 and 7. So Gideon said, for this cause When the Lord has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars." Then he went up from there to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. So he also spoke to the men of Penuel, saying, "When I come back in peace, I will tear down this tower." Okay, he's mad now. Now Gideon's mad at them. Is that map still up? Go back to that map, the map there. You can see how Gideon went past Succoth, farther east to Penuel, and Penuel reacted the same way because they were afraid the Midianites would come back west against them. Now Gideon was soft in his response to the Ephraimites, but now he flipped, and now he's being harsh. What changed? Okay, Ray, you made this big speech about being soft, and now he's being angry. What happened here? Here we go. He was harsh against Succoth and Penuel because their stance was actually adding to Israel's oppression. It was causing more trouble. There's nothing wrong with the righteous getting firm with those who make trouble against the righteous. There's nothing wrong with that. And I've had people tell me, you can't be like that. Well, the Bible gives me plenty of permission to. Now, I'm very soft when I need to be, but this right now in this scenario that we're talking about is life and death. People are being killed. Israel had been oppressed and starving for 7 years. It's time to be firm. Now, Gideon, he did not ask these men of Succoth and Penuel, he didn't ask them to go out and fight. He didn't say, "Come out and run out with me." All he said was, "Could you give some bread?" He didn't ask them for horses and weapons. All he asked was for bread. And if you ask me, that's not asking much. It's not asking a whole lot. But by refusing to help, they had become an enemy of Israel. An enemy of Israel. Because they were actually helping to facilitate the possibility of more oppression staying there. And that's why Gideon is so mad. Here at the end, we're going to find out why Gideon is so harshly driven also. But since Gideon was commanded to remove Israel's enemy, then that's why he said, "When I come back, I'm going to tear y'all up." That's what he was told to do. Get rid of Israel's enemy. These men had just become Israel's enemy. Do y'all remember the harsh rebuke in the Song of Deborah in Judges 5? It was a harsh rebuke that was against all the tribes that refused to help fight in the attack against the Canaanites. These tribes went to war against the Canaanites, and there's a bunch of tribes that said, we don't care. And they didn't even bother helping. In this rebuke, it says, "Reuben, why did you sit among your sheepfolds? Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan. Dan remained on their ships. Asher considered at the seashore, while Zebulun and Naphtali jeopardized their lives to the point of death for y'all." They jeopardized their lives for you, and you just stayed what you were doing. You just kept, we'll just got our little own thing going. These tribes, Zebulun and Naphtali in that chapter, they were fighting for all of Israel. And so the tribes that did not help, they were rebuked sharply for not helping. And so these tribes were a beginning example. Now Succoth and Penuel, they had their chance and they made their choice. But now in refusing to turn and help, they're left with a warning of judgment that is coming to tear them down. You will not get on board. What you have to look forward to is judgment. And some of y'all see where I'm going with this right now. I want you to take notice what Gideon said in response to Succoth and Penuel's doubt when he said in verse 7. Look at verse 7. He said, "When the Lord has." You see that? When the Lord has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand. When He has. Gideon did not say if the Lord delivers them. He said when He has. You hear the faith in his tone? He believes he's going to get them. He knows he's going to get them. You can hear the confidence in his words. Friends, I want you to zero in on that for just a minute, because this is how believers talk. This is how believers talk. This is the way we speak. We shouldn't moan and whine, well, I hope God helps me. Well, I hope I get those kings. I'll do my best. I will when He has given them to me. You hear that? I hope He does. Oh, I hope He does. You realize we have redefined the word hope? Hope is a sure thing. The blessed hope, Jesus Christ, He's a sure thing. Now we turned it into, I hope it doesn't rain today. We have messed that word up. We've messed it up. This is not how believers talk. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the what? I want y'all to say that word with me because we have to get this. Now faith is the assurance. Everybody say it again. I like it. Faith is the assurance. Do you know what assurance is? It means it's going to happen. Okay? Look how Gideon is acting when he gives them to me. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Has Gideon caught these kings yet? Up to this point? No, he has not. But he's speaking confidently that he will. And don't you just know that the men of Succoth and Penuel are thinking, those Midianites are going to rip you up, man. You'll never get them. You may have fought over here and done good, but they're guarding their kings. It's going to get real. And those men believe those kings are going to come back through. That's why they're not helping giving the bread. And so that's why Gideon also said in verse 9. Look what he says in verse 9. He says, when I return safely, when I return in peace, means I'm coming back. Ain't nothing happening to me. He's very assured here, I will tear down this tower. Gideon is trusting what God said. Gideon is not listening to what everybody else says. Do you hear me? He's trusting what God told him. He's not listening to what everybody else is saying. I know you turn on the news and you listen to all this stuff and within 10 minutes you're upset. You've lost hope. And what's everything coming to? What's going to happen with this? You're listening to what everybody else says. Listen to what God says. When you turn on the news, it's not falling apart. It's coming together. It was prophesied the world's going to go this way. Don't worry. God's got this. Okay, don't get all worked up. Listen to what God tells you, not what everybody else says. Gideon is trusting in God because he's got that promise that he's going to take the Midianites out. Judges 8 and 10. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were at Karkor, and their armies with them, about 15,000, all who were left of all the army of the people of the east, for 120,000 men. That's a lot. Who drew the sword had fallen. Then Gideon went up by the road of those who dwell in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. When Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued them, and he took the two kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and routed the whole army. That means he took care of them and he did away with them. He got the whole army. Now it's just the two kings left. That's it. Gideon just wiped out all the Midianites that had been oppressing Israel for the past 7 years. He got them all. It's done. It's done. You know why? Because God told him so back in Judges 6:16. He said, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man. God promised, and now it came to pass, didn't it? Friends, did God demonstrate His power? Did He not do it? Well, sure He did. That's good to see. Did God keep His promise? Of course He did. So now I want to ask you, does this help your faith to know that when God promises, God delivers? When God says, I'm going to do something, He does it. Now, you may have promises of God known to you in your life that you haven't seen the victory yet. And why are you not seeing the victory yet? Maybe because you're listening to everybody else and not what He said. Time to throw a switch, isn't it? I got to start listening to what God says and stop listening to everybody else. So Gideon got these two kings, just like he said he would. But did you see how he caught them? How he caught them. It says he attacked the camp while they felt secure. He attacked the camp while they felt secure. It was all over for them at a time when they least expected it. Friends, Jesus is coming. at a time when we least expect it. And those that feel secure. Well, I've got my money, I've got my career, I've got my big house, I've got all my guns, I've got my, guns, gold, and government, the 3 G's that I trust in. I feel nice and secure. He's coming, and He's coming with judgment, and it's going to pop on you when you least expect it. But it was all over for them. They didn't expect it. Judges 8 and 13. Then Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle, from the ascent of Heres, and he caught a young man of the men of Succoth and interrogated him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 77 men. Then he came to the men of Succoth and said, Here are Zebah, listen to this, here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your weary men? And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. Then he tore down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. Were they not warned? Were they not warned? They were warned. Now, I've already given a warning that Jesus is coming. There's a lot of people that may hear me on the radio or YouTube, I don't know, and you're acting in your sin. You feel secure. You're thinking everything's all right. And I'm telling you, the Lord is going to come back with judgment, and you're going to feel like everything's just fine until He gets here. And when He gets here, it's too late. That's why it's your opportunity to repent and get right with Jesus right now. All people have been saying He's coming back for centuries. You may have your last day today, for all you know. 3 days ago, a friend of mine from high school was in a car wreck and died. I'm going to his funeral this week. It's over for him. It's done. Who says it's going to be centuries for you? It could be any time. But judgment came. They were warned, and at any time, at absolutely any time, these men could have said, hold on, wait a minute, you're right. You're right, sorry, we'll help, we'll give bread, but they never did. They were unrepentant, unsupportive to the very, very end. And now judgment has been executed. And so I want to ask you a question here. Do you think that Gideon just happened to run into this man of Succoth, this young man? Do you think he just happened to bump into him? Or did God deliberately have this man positioned in Gideon's path so that Gideon could get the leaders' names to make an example out of them before killing the rest of Israel's enemy? I think God placed this man right in Gideon's path. I don't believe in accidents like that. No such thing as coincidence. I believe God is in complete control of everything, and that's why he bumped into this kid, okay? Let me read on. Judges 8 and 18 says, And he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor? So they said, As you are, so were they. Each one resembled the son of a king. Then he said, They were my brothers. I see why he's so mad. I see why Gideon's so hot. They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise, kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. So Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself and kill us. For as a man is, so is his strength. So Gideon rose and killed him. Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Apparently, Gideon kept these 2 kings alive. You got to think of the order of events. He let these 2 kings remain alive to personally witness the finality of their kingdom's destruction. He made them watch all of these guys get put to death. The kings had to see this whole thing. But this incident at Tabor here that Gideon asks them about, it's not recorded in the Bible except for here in Judges 8, so we don't know much about it. All we know about it is that these kings commanded killings that murdered Gideon's brothers. Now, Deuteronomy gives an avenger of blood. I've taught on this before. It gives permission to the avenger of blood to kill those who deliberately and sinfully, ungodly commit willful murder. We went through a whole subject on this, that when Israel got established, they set up refuge cities all over the country so that if you accidentally killed somebody, you better get under refuge, and then the Avenger of Blood can't kill you while you're in that refuge city. And that was a picture of Jesus Christ, that you get under the refuge of the Lord. You're protected even though you have done something wrong. But here in this, Deuteronomy gives the Avenger of Blood permission to kill those who commit murder. Now, it's likely, because of this, that Gideon's brothers did not die in a battle. They died in their homes or in their fields, just doing normal everyday life. And these Midianites swept through and just killed them. Now remember, these Midianites severely oppressed Israel for years. That doesn't mean they just looked at them funny when they walked through. It means they stole their food, they killed them at will, they did what they wanted. I'm thinking of the Holocaust. They oppressed Jews in the Holocaust. It's extreme oppression. I'm not trying to make a comparison here, but what I'm saying is now vengeance is granted. Vengeance is granted to Gideon. So Gideon asked his young son to kill these kings for two reasons. Because one, it would have been an insult on these kings to be killed by a boy. For these kings to know, I'm about to get killed by a little kid. That's like the ultimate insult to them. But also, the second thing, Gideon was trying to pass the honor to his son, to teach his son that a severe death is exactly the kind of judgment that such evil deserves. He wanted his son to understand this. This kind of evil deserves a death like this. But the boy wasn't ready to do it. He couldn't do it, so Gideon did it himself. And then taking the crescent moon ornaments off the camels as spoils of war was probably, like I said, crescent moon shapes. It was probably ornaments on the camels that represented the royalty for those kings. That was their camels. He wanted to get rid of every symbol that had anything to do with that kingdom. Get rid of it. I'm even taking the ornaments off these camels. I'm not going to send the camels off and somebody will see those ornaments and go, oh, isn't that for the Midianite kings? He wanted this kingdom to be done, gone, and forgotten about. So he took them. But now I want to ask you a question. Because we saw the men of Succoth and Peniel, they were not friends of God in this case. They were being friends of the world. I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, are you a friend of God? Well, of course I am. Well, wait a minute. It comes with a little more to it than that. James 4:4 says this, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. It's not just God, I'll work with you later. You are an enemy. You ever had an actual enemy who was harshly against you? You try to friend yourself up with the world, you're an enemy of God. But this works in reverse too. Whoever wants to be a friend of God makes himself an enemy to the world. Sorry, but that's the truth. And I know some of you have felt this. But whenever the world gets mad at you for walking in righteousness, don't blow your top. Maintain your self-control. Titus 2:11 says, for the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly. That means self-control. Keep a lid on it. Keep yourself chilled, maintained. We should live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present age. To be a friend of God, you can't make a priority out of trying to appease the world. See, in a lot of people, they will do everything to appease the world. They will not try to be a friend of God. That's sad. Succoth and Peniel tried to appease the world, and it cost them what? Pretty much everything. It cost them everything. You can't play in the middle. Will you give bread to my army? Well, that depends. They're trying to play the middle. Pick a side, get on it, and stand there. You can't play the middle, and you can't play one side or the other at will. You're on one side or the other. And Gideon put these men before a choice. It's God or it's the world. They had to make a decision. Now, these men should have considered the victories that Gideon was experiencing, and that those victories should have helped them make the right decision. Today, I'm putting that same decision in front of you. It's God or the world. And realize I'm talking more than just y'all here in the room. It's God or the world. That's your choice. You need to make it. And if you will look at the testimony of my life, the victories that I have in my life through Jesus, that should influence you into making the right decision. That's why we have to maintain our self-control. Because when you offer people God or the world, Jesus' salvation or not, they're going to look at your life before they make that decision. And if you go popping off all the time, they're not going to want this Jesus if you're claiming victory. Well, if you got victory in Him, why are you blowing up all the time? If you look at the testimony of my life and see the victories, that should help you make the right decision. It should have helped Succoth and Penuel make the right decision. Hey, aren't you the guy that's been kicking all the Midianites everywhere? Okay, yeah, we'll give you the bread, man. We want to be behind that. They just didn't want it. Well, Ray, everything in my life is going really good right now. Everything's just fine. I'm okay. I mean, you thump the Bible and that's good for you. You go to church, that's good for you. You're this big Christian guy and better for you, man. I'm pleased. I'm glad for you, but things are pretty good for me. Remember, the Midianites' final judgment arrived when they felt secure, when they thought everything was okay, when they felt guarded, when they least expected it to happen. 2 Corinthians 5:10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. We all got a judgment day coming, and you don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen. But remember that God put a young man in Gideon's path, someone to blow the lid off their own security. He blew the whole top off their little secure place. God has positioned me in your path, I believe, to tell you that right now is the time to get right with Jesus Christ today. Well, I'm thinking about it. You need to do it right now. Maybe later. Maybe later means no. Well, I'll get there. I'll get there means no. These guys didn't give bread. That means no. Where's your yes? Stop serving the world. You cannot play both sides. Remember Gideon's faith, how certain he was of victory against the enemy. Friends, we can have that same faith. That same faith. In 2 Corinthians 4:13, says, since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what is written, I believed and therefore I spoke. We also believe and therefore speak, knowing that He who raised up the Lord Jesus will also raise us up with Jesus. We just read that God has a way of defeating a sinful enemy. And in the case of our salvation, is that not a good thing? Because our enemy was defeated. That's a good thing for us, that God defeated the enemy. But also remember how Gideon wanted to show his son how a severe death is exactly the kind of judgment that evil brings. Friends, this is why Jesus Christ's crucifixion was so barbaric. Because all of our sin was cast upon Him, and He took what we deserved upon Himself. That's why His death was so barbaric. When I think about Him killing those kings, saying, son, here's exactly what sin deserves like this, a barbaric death, you think of Jesus Christ. That death was not easy. That was the most miserable death that could have been done, a crucifixion. That's what sin does. Ray, you're scaring me. Good. Good. Let me give you the good news. Romans 8:1, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Ray, I'm scared. You better get under the blood of the Lamb. What this means, since Jesus offered Himself to you, what this means is that you are not worthless. You are priceless. Messiah Jesus died on the cross to redeem you.